today we are going to see how a startup and corporation partnership can lead to a success. And our guests have some great stories and experiences to share. We got two awesome startup founders, a corporation representative, and an investor that connects startups with strategic partners. So we have the whole package here. I'm looking really forward to this conversation. So I'll quickly introduce a few things, and then we'll move on to the juicy stuff, all right? So why are we here today? Because Podim is, taking place in May. So because we just cannot wait for Podim conference to start. So we decided to host a series of satellite warm-up events. I think getting in touch with all of you and having interesting discussion is a great way to kick off the Podim season. I also want to quickly introduce Podim in case some of you are not familiar with it. Podim is a startup and tech conference which prioritizes quality networking and meaningful meetings. That is why we are placed only for 1,000 attendees and 150 chosen startups. If you are a startup, you can apply on our website until 15th of March. We already received over 400 applications and are looking forward to another great event together with you. So save the date. The Podim is happening from 17th to 19th of May. We also received confirmation from a lot of interesting speakers already, so it will be a great lineup and a great 3-day program. Just a few names: Ali Schuber, which is a former vice president for strategic innovations at Salesforce. We have David Rose, which is a serial entrepreneur, super angel investor, and best-selling author. And we have Ms. Rina Honor from 500 Istanbul, a co-founder, a serial entrepreneur and investor. So it's a great lineup. We already will announce in this or beginning of next week, and we are really looking forward to the program of this year's event again. And of course, our Podim could not be possible without our great partners, and one of them is South Central Ventures. They've been a Podim partner for years now, and I'd like to invite Jure Mikuž, South Central Ventures co-founder and managing partner, to talk about the conference and to have an introductory chat. So you are welcome, and thank you again for being a partner and a good supporter of our event. Good evening and welcome to the satellite event.
Hello, Urban. Hello, everybody.
So
Thanks for having me here.
How are you today? How was the start of the year?
Well, today is the March 2nd, I believe. So it's already a quarter of this year. I could say that we did not expect to be in this position after the first quarter of 21, right? We were expecting to be fully out of the pandemic already, or at least, on some way out of the pandemic. But as far as the businesses are concerned, it's going pretty well. I mean, the companies are doing, I would say, above expectations. They have adapted to the new situation, the new normal, and it looks pretty good.
But if we travel back in time 1 year from now, right, and just with Marin, we talk about that we were in London in February 2020, and we didn't even imagine what kind of year will be ahead of us. So considering and comparing to that, it's kind of a good start of the year, right?
Well, I flew the aircraft last week, and that was almost a year after my previous flight. So if you asked me a year ago whether, I will be grounded for a year, I wouldn't believe you. Definitely not. So yeah, a lot has changed. The entire world has changed. But look, the startups are a breed of animals which can adapt to the new situation very fast. Startups are very mobile, are very agile, and comparing them to the rest of the economy, I could say that we could be in worse position.
You are managing your second fund, so can you tell us a few words and stats about both funds that you are managing?
Yeah, we are now managing our second fund. It's a 42 million euro fund targeting the Western Balkans countries. With both funds, the first one was 20 million euro. With both funds, we are looking for new opportunities in technology sector. We are quite opportunistic in our approach in terms of the industries, but naturally, as our portfolio builds up, we are looking more into the industries that we know better than the others. It's I would say it's one of the or the most active VC fund in all across the Western Balkans. We've got 4 offices: one in Skopje in Macedonia, one in Belgrade in Serbia, one in Zagreb, and the in Croatia, and the last one here in Ljubljana. We are at the end of the investment cycle on this fund and putting together slowly our next fund. Hopefully, we'll be closing it soon. In order to continue our strategy to build, super successful and super innovative businesses out of this region.
And some of those stories that you mentioned and hope for are also here with us today. And recent stories from your portfolio. So Agrivi, Bulb, DaiBau, AdScanner. I mean, there are quite success stories. Just recently, great milestones achieved. How satisfied are you and proud are you as an investor and fund manager?
I could only say good words and good things about the founders from our portfolio. Maybe some of you have read about the new financing round on DaiBau, where we closed the next round together with Henkel. Then we had a co-investment round with Fil Rouge and the co-investment vehicle of European Investment Fund on Agrivi. We also signed a strategic partnership between our portfolio company BulbTech and M+ Group from Croatia. All of these achievements are just confirmation and validation of our strategy that we are following, and we're looking forward to similar transactions. I can say that there are a couple of them lined up for the first half of this year.
So there's more to come. So
definitely.
Looking forward. So being part of Podim for many years, what are your expectations for this year event?
Look, your introduction was quite ambitious, so that's why I'm looking forward to meeting new founders, new opportunities, of course, new co-investors as well, and new partners, industrial partners. But it's all about building this community. It's all about sharing the knowledge and expertise, and also finding new collaboration opportunities with other co-investors and startups. So hopefully it's going to be a great event. Hopefully it's going to be in person event as well, not just online. I must say that I miss socializing with founders and other investors very much. I think after a year of Zoom conferencing, everybody is a bit fatigued in this sense.
So since a lot of founders are watching this event, and can you just tell us who is your potential investment? What are your criteria? Who are you targeting, looking for regarding the investment?
We will, and we are already looking for investments in the technology sector all across the industries, in late seed or early A rounds. We're writing checks somewhere from a couple of €100,000 to, let's say, 3 to 5 million euros across all the the stages. We are looking for great founding teams, not just individuals. We like to see teams. We like to see the first traction, commercial traction of the products that they're selling or developing. And we are looking for teams that have at least pan-European, if not global, ambition with their solutions. So we are not looking for companies that would limit themselves to specific markets. unless this little market is US, right? But otherwise, we are looking for teams from all over the Western Balkans, or with some connection to the Western Balkans that have the pan-European ambition.
Right. I also hope that you met some of them on Podim. And again, thank you for being Golden Unicorn partner of this year's event, and looking forward to the discussion that will follow. And now,
pleasure.
Thank you, Jure. Dan is also with us, our host today. Dan from Der Brutkasten. Hello, Vienna.
Hello, Maribor. Happy to be with you. Very good topic tonight. CVC, corporate venture capital, and obviously growing your business with corporates, be it as investors or be it as your clients. I think it's a very good topic. We have a lot of learnings and 2 startups that have grown quite a bit with this good cooperation, which can be extremely meaningful for both sides if done correctly. If not done correctly, it can be a disaster.
All right, so I'll not hold you back anymore from this interesting discussion. Just as usual, we'll warm up with the Podim teaser video. Enjoy the discussions. Please share the event so as many people can watch it. And looking forward, and don't forget about applying if you are a startup till 15th of March. Then the virtual floor is yours, and see you later in the discussion. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
2020 was wild. It showed us that change is indeed the only constant. And it showed that you should change with it. We can only influence what we do, how we do it, the way we see things. It seemed like 2020 would prevent the podium we all love from taking place. Yet we didn't give up on it. And you didn't give up on us. An obstacle became an opportunity. Podim moved to the digital realm. It became borderless. Nothing could stop us from sharing knowledge, making connections, and getting closer to our goals. 2020 forced us to discover Podim's future. In 2021, we want to see you again. We want to meet you again. And we want to remain borderless. That's why Podim is becoming a hybrid conference. Be one of the 1,000 attendees. Make meaningful connections, get practical feedback, and grab business-changing opportunities. Join us and let Podim change you and your business. And remember, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. See you at Podim DX.
So welcome back to our virtual stage, Podim DX satellite event number 2, startup collaboration, startup corporate collaboration. Very exciting topic and very exciting panel tonight here with us. You met Jure Mikuž already, managing partner at South Central Ventures. Jure, welcome back on stage.
Hi.
Then we have Marin Ćurković, CEO at AdScanner. Marin, hi.
Hi.
Robert Günther, Head of Corporate Venture Capital at Henkel. Robert, servus.
Hi.
Last but not least, Martin Pelcl, co-founder at DaiBau. Martin, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Jure, you have a hard cut at 8 p.m., so I'd like to proceed with you with the question. I mean, AdScanner and DaiBau, they're both in your portfolio. They all both work with corporates. They both have maybe even investments from that sphere. Is that a usual case in your portfolio? Do you pursue this kind of cooperation with corporates?
Yeah, I mean, they don't both have the investments from corporates. They both work with corporates, but they will tell you more about it. This is since most of our portfolio is pursuing some B2B business models or strategies. I can say yes, we are pursuing working with corporates, basically with most of our portfolio companies.
In this meaning, is it a part of your, let's say, job and a part of your, I don't know, contribution to startups to have a good network of corporates that you put into the box?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, startups at some point need to stop just raising money, and they have to start earning money as well, invoicing something. So corporates are definitely one of the the potential targets of our portfolio companies, and that's why we are working closely with a number of corporate clients or corporate partners in order to have to be able to help our portfolio companies establish some business relationships with those companies, and they make the first or initial revenues in this segment.
In this meeting, we often say clients are the best investors, so to say, when you make revenues with them. Would you share this view and opinion?
Well, it's definitely a validation of the products or solutions. Many startups, or most of the startups, are developing new products that are not validated on the market yet. And if they manage to sell those solutions to some established companies, that is quite credible, right, for the other types of their clients as well. If they manage to sell something from a small company to a big client, this is truly a validation of the quality of their product.
So do you see the corporates rather in the role of co-investor in your portfolio companies, or as a client for your portfolio companies?
Both. Actually, both. We are looking for corporates to be, of course, the clients and of our portfolio companies. We know that there's not going to be any issues with liquidity on those clients, and these can be a very good partners also in future development of the product and so on. And at the same time, of course, many corporations have their corporate arms, corporate venture arms, and these can be a good co-investors with us in the follow-on rounds, maybe at some point even as the acquirers of our shares, if the corporation decides to acquire the entire company or partially acquire the company.
Maybe before we move on, and I'd like to talk to Robert and actually all of you on that topic. Do you rather see corporate venture arms as strategic investors, or do they usually invest like you guys as a financial investor?
So we actually invest, of course, as a financial investor, being a kind of the validation of our activities. Nevertheless, we are not in one pond, for example, with the usual VCs who are financially driven or only financially driven, because what we need to bring to the table is the strategic value as well. But there is no strategic value without a financial value add that we can bring. But this is always something that we, of course, need to bring to the table and that we need to prove. And that is very important. And I think there is no just strategic value investor. You need to be successful on the financial side as well.
What is the setup in your particular case in Henkel? Are you, so to say, outsourced? We know, for example, Helvetia Ventures had a B2B partners, a separate fund for that. How did you structure that in your case?
So I think it's very important that you have a separate budget, that you are separate from the core entity. So we are structured in a way that we have 150 million commitment that was introduced 3 years ago. And we invest this into sweet spot Series A in the area of, let's say, consumer goods, material science, digitalization, B2B, B2C models. And that's the kind of our focus. And we are independent with respect to our investments that we do, but we need to take care of the buy-in from our business, because they are in the end the ones who are delivering on the values that we actually promise our startups. So yes, we are independent from an investment decision, but we of course need the buy-in to provide the unfair advantage that we always promise.
And would the business side usually give you the topics that they are trying to source in and find startups and innovation outside? or do you go around and find interesting topics and then offer it to the business?
So it's twofold. So on the one hand, it's looking outside the box and maybe not limiting yourself to some strategic, let's say, goals that the business has, and think beyond that. That's one aspect. But then also when it comes to certain areas, when it comes, for example, in our area of 3D printing, print electronics, or coatings, then of course we have some kind of focus areas where we say this is of particular interest for our core business, and that is why this could also be an interesting investment case.
Maybe Jure, just to be a bit provocative, I remember years ago when corporate venturing started in Austria, at least, you had funds who said, come on, corporates, just like invest in our funds and leave that business. You don't really know how to do that. But now I can see that they are perceiving them as equal partners who have built up skills and serious teams around that topic. How do you see the corporate venture arms? Are they venture capital firms such as yours, or is that some kind of difference in your perspective?
Yeah, I think your observation is correct. I mean, let's say 5 or maybe even 10 years ago, the setup of corporate venture funds was much different from what today is. And I can see that, I mean, there's a number of different models of corporate venture funds. We can see those that are very closely integrated into the main corporate groups, having less of that financial aspect of looking for investments and looking more for those companies that could be a good strategic fit. And on the other hand, we've got some of the corporate venture funds that are basically a financial institutions, and they are just somehow related to the main groups. But the point that I think is the most relevant with the corporate venture funds is that they can bring some industrial knowledge and also the ecosystem for the startups, which is otherwise very difficult to get into. I mean, to have some sort of a collaboration between the startup and the in very early stages and the corporation. It can be quite challenging unless the corporation has this deep understanding of what startup is and how the startup works, operates, and what they need to have, to keep in mind in order to collaborate with them, with the startup, right?
Mm-hmm. Martin, DaiBau. Maybe can you just pitch your company first, and then we'll deep dive into the topics, the same topics from the startup's perspective and the struggles that maybe you guys have seen, or the benefits in this collaboration. But let's start with, what do you guys do?
We are solving from the outside view, very simple problem. We are matching investors, namely consumers, but also institutions, companies, and so on, with the right and available construction professionals. So if you need a surveyor, painter, or whoever who would build your house or office space, you can find a professional which is verified and screened on our network. And we are now present on 11 markets here in Europe, and we are till now we help with around 300,000 to 150,000 projects.
Okay. What have your major milestones been in the last years? I think you started 2013. Did you experience good digital boost, so to say, in Corona times? And why did you decide to partner with Henkel?
So our history started just like a local pocket project, student project actually in Slovenia, when we said, after a couple of years, let's do a platform for construction professionals. It will be easy, it will be fast. Because this problem was really apparent, me as an architect and my friend were asking ourselves why there is no digital platform for construction guys. And we just started to build it up. But first, we didn't have a business model. We didn't really know how the industry worked, although we were architects. We got rejected by so many contractors, and it was really desperate for first 2 years. But then we discovered a sweet spots that those construction professionals aren't really interested in their digital presentation. They're interested in leads. Obviously, they want to get jobs. And at this point, we really started to grow. We really started to manually onboard the construction professionals on our platform on trial period to really show that we are serious. And then it kind of started to grow. We started to become a really prominent platform, really prominent player in Slovenia. And we said, let's try in Croatia. It's a similar market. It's close. We set up a team with local partners. We failed. We set up another team. We failed. And then we decided to have a team in-house to really, have the control over the work and the progress. And then Slovenia is kind of a small incubator. You can try out stuff. It's a small market, relatively developed, and this was our breeding ground for experiences in expansion. Then we went from Croatia to Austria, and now we operate in, let's say, 4 markets. Slovenia, Austria, Croatia, and Serbia we are market leaders there. We opened Romania and Slovakia, and now 4 new bigger markets after the Series A. When Corona came, I think we share the same experience with all of us. We were scared. We didn't know how the construction sector is going to be impacted. It looked really grim at the beginning. Honestly, I had fear for our existence, but then actually a very interesting trend emerged because people were kind of trapped inside their 4 walls. They probably started to see their apartments and houses. And because money was, piling up, although the crisis was kind of opening, they wanted to renovate. They wanted to have better, nicer homes. And actually, we boomed. We doubled the traffic last year. Okay, the sales were a little bit stalled, a little bit slower than we expected. But anyway, ended the growth with like 60-70%, even all in all. So it proved that we are quite a resilient business. But it actually also opened a new interesting topic that this mastodon of construction sector is getting digitalized, that all those companies which were operating in their brick and mortar mentality are now thinking about digitalizing, and this really opened up a great opportunity. And just by coincidence, also Henkel joined, so we have like a great infrastructure for the future.
Was this boost the reason for the growth capital? Was that the reason why you, so to say, partnered and took the investment from Henkel?
I think it was like a really interesting chemistry. We never were thinking seriously about partnership. We had it on paper we had one experience from before. Actually, Vito One is also kind of a strategic investor from our Series A round, but in Fisman, their arm of large corporations selling heat ventilation and other equipment. This was apparent, and we thought it will kind of bring us to a strategic partnership, but it didn't, because we didn't share a vision. By coincidence, or maybe even not, we met with the Henkel team, and we saw that actually we have really aligned visions. And when you see that, you're quite happy because it's much easier to communicate what the future would be, how the partnership could look like. And this was not connected really with the results, but it probably speeded up the process, and maybe it was less hesitation from Henkel's side when they saw that we kind of went through Corona crisis pretty much unharmed.
Did you perceive them as a financial investor? Why did you take Henkel? Because there's Henkel power behind it, opportunities for your business, or was it the financial aspect and maybe the speed in that aspect something that was relevant to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's both, of course. You need money for expansion, that's for sure. But I think, especially in our model, you're very limited with the offline infrastructure, corporate infrastructure. It's really hard to open new markets. It's really hard to think about new solutions because you usually find deaf ears and especially local corporations. Let's say local corporation establishments, representatives are not really keen on developing new features, thinking about digitalization and so on. So we tried with so many different companies, and we proposed so many proposals, but it ended up locally, never went further to headquarters. But this time I think it's different because we see a great opportunity to use this corporate infrastructure and simply speed up the expansion process, but also to have this corporate validation, which can open up so many opportunities, because you have to think about your mentality kind of changes, because you have an overview of how the large corporation is working, and this is something really valuable you can't find if you don't have this kind of a partnership.
Jure, but just a side note, hearing that, do you think that corporate venture capital is a competitor to traditional venture capital firms, or do you see them as potential partners? Because obviously you guys are trying to get the best deals as early as possible. And if the competition is there, then that might be a relevant aspect for your business as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they are competitors as well. I mean, there for sure there are startups that would probably never partner with some corporate venture funds because they don't want to get too integrated into some corporate groups, probably. And there are startups who would probably look for the investment exclusively from the corporate venture funds because they see this added value from a certain corporation as the main added value for them. I mean, we see the corporate venture funds as our partners who can bring the added value to the table. Although it's always it's always need to have this assessment whether this partnership will close any of the doors for the startup in the future. That's I think it's a relevant topic.
Do you see that as well? Are there any threats to be considered in when a strategic corporate partner is investing in a startup?
I think this depends a lot of the model of investing of a particular corporate venture fund, because if the fund is organized as this one of from Henkel, so meaning that they're almost completely independent in their decision making and managing the investments and so on, then there's no need for worry. But if they are very strongly integrated into the main group, and if they are just one, let's say, department of the main group, there might be some challenges for the startup on their future development route. Especially it also depends how much what share are they looking for. If they acquire a share that's too big in the startup, and if they have a very strong presence in the board of the startup, then this might raise some eyebrows on the in some competitive clients of this startup.
I mean, you talked to a lot of your colleagues on the international level. Do you see any venture capital firms who have a red flag when a corporate venture fund is involved?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's more related to our projected route to exit, meaning that if any, I wouldn't even say corporate venture fund, if any corporation gets too deeply involved in a particular startup, this probably blocks a couple of routes to exit for this particular startup.
Robert, and these are probably all topics that you consider when you position yourself as a venture capital firm. And in addition, you use the word integrated. So how strongly do you integrate your startups after investing in them?
So I think a very important point is that you stick to market rules. So you shouldn't try to make investments fit to you, but you need to accept market rules. This is, for example, that you are not taking significant stakes compared to other investors. It is when it comes to, let's say, right of first refusals or stuff like that. that is not acceptable, not for a corporate venture arm and also not for a usual VC. And what we really like is to pair up with VCs, because on the one hand, we bring the value add of collaborating and stuff like that. But at some point, we are also interested in a return, and we also need to take maybe tough decisions in the board. And therefore, I think it's a very good balance if you have both investors on a board and also with, let's say, comparable powers. And that's also very important, that not someone is having like a high percentage in the company or has more than one board representation and so on. And all this is in the interest of that we have aligned interests. So our interest of Henkel Ventures is to bring the startups to the next level, and also to have the best exit for the founders, for the investors. And that could be Henkel. But to be honest, if it's not Henkel and someone else, even a competitor, is buying one of our portfolio companies, that's fine for us, because it's the market price that needs to be paid, and you can't limit the exit opportunities. If a corporate VC arm comes to a startup and asks for right of first refusals or limiting exit opportunities, you really need to think twice, and that's a clear advice. And also on the independence of the startup. So from my perspective, the startup needs to stay independent entirely. Of course, it can help that you do joint development agreements, that you have some marketing agreements in place in the beginning, but they shouldn't limit the startup in the future. So if they decide to go for a different route, that's why they are there. It's them deciding, and then we can only offer on a, let's say, pull versus push basis.
I think you mentioned something very important, and I remember when I started broadcasting back in 2014 in a big media group in Austria, I was also trying to sort of say initiate a corporate venture fund back then, and it was kind of totally counterintuitive not to take the majority of stakes when you have M&A acquisitions and so on and so forth. How did you achieve that mindset switch in Henkel? Do you have any tips when you just take a few percent, for example?
So first of all, I think there are always people in the organization which have the M&A view. So rather buy the company earlier than later, and why prosper them and then need to pay a higher price at a certain point. They forget that if you go that route, the company is not going to prosper because usually if you acquire startups too early, you will kill them. That's also an experience that I was making in Henkel, but also other corporations. So that is why it is very important to educate people and to tell them, of course, it is on the one hand, you maybe are going to buy the company at a certain point and you need to pay the price, the market price for it. And maybe you have also invested in the company not only money but also resources, and it is because of you that it is where it stands now, at least to a certain extent. But that's life. You also had the opportunity to maybe look at different startups, and some of them failed and you have not acquired them, and some of them prospered, and then that's the kind of the decision that you need to take. In addition, you also need to have clear rules within a corporate to say what are the guiding principles. A guiding principle should be that you are not taking significant stakes, because on the, let's say, positive side for the corporate, maybe you could see, we want to acquire the company M&A wise and so on, but that's not how it goes, because in the end, you are going to be the lender of last resort. And also, as South Central just mentioned it's, of course, you are seen as a partner with money and deep pockets, and you only want to be seen. Yes, you will support the startup when it needs to be, but you do not want to, let's say, have too high influence.
Super interesting insights. Thank you also for openness and honesty. Marin, let's jump to AdScanner. First of all, also I'd like to ask you to pitch what you guys do, and then I'd like to deep dive into your experiences in growing your business with big corporations, which seem to have been one of the crucial strategic moves. What do you do as AdScanner?
Yeah, sure. So we take the old and questionable and rusty media channel that is television and breathe new life form into it with really data. Essentially, we take telco data. We partner up with telecom companies who maybe you are watching your TV program via your telecom company, and we take raw data from them, essentially the interactions between the users and their television channels and television set-top boxes. And we turn this data into advanced measurement, into audience insights, audience segments, and also we try to bridge the gap between TV and online. So everybody knows retargeting in online. So you visit a website, and for a month later on, you receive ads because you visited that website. Well, we also enable that for television. So you spend a lot of time with football, and then you kind of start getting digital ads based on football because you watch football on television.
Is that affordable for smaller ones?
What do you mean for smaller ones? For who?
For broadcasting, for example. Could I afford such a marketing campaign?
If you can afford Facebook advertising, then you can, yeah.
Seriously, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, are you saving the TV business model?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? And it depends what you think television is, because if you're a big broadcaster and you are very much about conserving linear TV advertising budgets, then maybe no, we're not saving anyone. But if you think of television like we do as the big screen in your living room, which is still the biggest and best source of video, and then it doesn't really matter if you're watching YouTube on it or whatever, then definitely, yeah.
Is TV in general in decline? Do you have any data on that?
Yeah, so 2020 was a little bit crazy because it definitely actually gave additional reach and a boost to TV, especially news, anything, crazy year. But overall, in terms of time spent with linear television and traditional television is in decline overall. However, that's not true in money being spent and allocated on TV, especially not in Europe. So it's at least stable, if not growing slightly, and especially any content and business models that have to do with connected TV or converged TV, as we call it, so TV and online being together, that is growing very rapidly. That's the biggest growing field in all of ad tech.
So you guys are growing with the TV as well, or maybe I think you won the 2019 pitching competition at Podim. Yes, maybe you can give us some update on what happened since then and what was your growth in particular in the Corona year.
Yeah, so in 2019, that's I think it was pretty much at the same time that we are just after we also signed the partnership and the investment with South Central Ventures. And from that moment on, we were up until then we were pretty much active in Croatia, Austria, and just a little bit in Bulgaria. And that enabled us we focused since then on really opening up bigger markets, and Germany was the biggest and is the biggest next move for us still. And since then, we in the beginning of 2020, despite maybe because of Corona, we launched a German subsidiary, and we already launched our services and our solution in the market while we were signing up and are signing and finalizing a cooperation with the big corporate. And that's been rather successful. On one side, as I said, because TV has been in demand in general. And on the other side, I think, especially last year, everybody tried to be opportunistic. If some, let's say, smaller startups were more able to be opportunistic compared to maybe bigger, already established suppliers and even agencies, so that actually helped us a little bit.
Could you give us some insights on your experience with working with corporates together? I think you've been growing your business in strong cooperation with them. I think we reported a couple of times about your collaboration with A1 in Austria, which was quite significant for them, and I think for you as well. Do you have any pros, any cons, your experiences?
So essentially, we don't sell to those big corporations. We partner up with them because essentially we take data that belongs to them and monetize it in the market. And the market for us being advertisers. So our business model relies on the fact that we partner up with these huge corporates who have data, but who either for technical reasons or strategic reasons or understanding reasons are not able to monetize on them themselves. So A1 was actually the first corporate to recognize this potential. And very early on, even before us, they had set up what they call a startup campus in Vienna, where essentially they were partnering up with companies like us, where it's all about creating new business models besides the standardized business models that they had. And this helped us immensely, really. It was sort of the biggest or the best traction that we could get at that stage. It was the first traction in another market. It was the first proof of concept outside of our home market in Croatia, and our first contact with, let's say, international advertisers and clients. There was without that we wouldn't be here today. So we definitely need that. And other than that, we partnered up with these. And it's good for us that corporates are big and that corporates are very organized and that they need to work with smaller and more agile partners, because if they could do all of this themselves, then I guess we wouldn't exist either. So that's
does big and very organized implicate also slow, or were you happy with their speed?
I mean, it definitely does implicate slow, because let's be honest, they will always have one thing that we don't have, and that is time, right? Because, let's face it, even for a company like Henkel, if we do innovation products, and sometimes if you wait half a year, then it's still pretty fast. Whereas for you as a startup, that's like you sometimes don't survive it. And this is where I think one of the biggest surprises for me was that actually the VC investment helped with that, because when I remember we were pitching to telcos all over Europe, and they were asking, who's invested? And I thought this was some kind of vanity question, but this was more like, hey, are you going to be there when we turn around our things in 1 year? So actually it was a good signal that they saw, hey, these guys are here to stay. And if this process takes us a year and a half, then this doesn't, they're not going to die next month, because they don't want to look foolish because they trusted in a company that doesn't exist in 6 months anymore.
So having a corporate partner as your client is a validation for the investor, and vice versa. Having an investor, a venture capital investor, is a validation for a corporate partner. So what's first? Do you have the corporate partner first, or you have investor first?
You'd be surprised how often we get the question from not potential investors, can we see who's in your cap table, or can we see who's behind you? So I definitely think with big corporates, when it's very significant to them, and that's also where you need to make the distinction. Sometimes you work with an innovation department, and they're of course, have to put cases on the road, and it's good for them, but they're not essentially the owners of new business models. Often they are all about incubating and accelerating, you as a corporation maybe, or corporation maybe. But when you are talking to those who put their own career on the line for new business models, they do want to see this, who's behind this? Do you have, strong support? Can I help somehow? So for us, it definitely seems to be a very good door opener.
Martin, for you as well, do you have this, so to say, approval badge when you have either Henkel as investor or venture capital firm in both relationships, so to say?
It certainly helps. I mean, it helps me as a founder. Maybe if I regard this as a future aspect, it helps especially in having this kind of also business approach into investing and regarding our business, and classical VC. Henkel corporate arm is let's say classical VC, but also in regard of some corporate goals or business goals behind. And if you have also VC, which has only clearly financial gains for like future aspects, then you have a nice mixture of nice mixture on the table to really be productive, I think.
What kind of questions was Robert asking you? Do you remember any? Anyway, if I should ask any of you something which is confidential, obviously you don't have to answer, but anything that you can tell us.
Well, it was really an interesting start. Robert was not the first contact. We actually met with their. I think the role of Adrian is that he is a global marketing lead for their adhesive section, and we kind of started as a client. And I think they wanted to try us out with the first package we sold to them. It was for 4 countries, and it was kind of initiated talks. Actually, Adrian asked us if we would open to partner up with them. And we thought it's just a joke or maybe some vanity. But then it kind of really evolved. We saw a lot of energy from their side, and the questions at the end from Robert were really connected with VC aspects, KPIs, and everything which you usually answer to the VCs. But their business side and their business team and the additive section was really more brainstorming about how we could integrate really practically in the future. So there were like two different sets of questions inside the same organization, which was interesting for us.
Robert, why was DaiBau an interesting target for you?
So we actually screened the global market for craftsman platforms 2 years ago. And at that time, actually, we didn't come across DaiBau in our first search. We came across different companies. And then we actually narrowed our search on areas or markets of our particular interest. And for Henkel, especially Eastern Europe, emerging Europe is, core for us. And that is why we then came in a second wave to see or to come across DaiBau. And then we said, wow, that's actually the perfect match. Not only because of the guys, because from our perspective, the team is most important, but also from their drive, their experience, and also their focus that they have for the future. And that was a perfect match. And then we proceeded on that side. But maybe also on trying out and also to build on what Martin just said is, of course, we have loads of collaborations with different startups. So we do pilots, we use services of startups, and we do this on let's say, 100 startups per year. And maybe we only invest into 5 or something each year. And this is also a kind of proof point for us. So if you are convinced of the product or as the user of a product, then maybe there is something beyond that, and that was definitely there for DaiBau. Yeah.
Jure, what was crucial for your involvement, for your investment at DaiBau?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, I met Martin through the referral of one of his angel investors, and it was, I would say, as he said at the beginning, it was. We felt it like a good fit from the very beginning. I mean, they were very low on revenues at that point, but that's something we are used to. But we could see the right drive, the right energy in the team, and we could see the market opportunity as well. So that was it.
What kind of role? Just maybe a sidestep. What kind of role do revenues play when you invest in companies? We have, we talk about this clash of, let's say, Silicon Valley doesn't really care. People say about revenues, and European investors look at revenues rather early. I think this has changed in the past 2 years. I think both sides have grown more together. Is it still the case? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, revenues do not harm, right? It's always good to see some cash coming in, right? For us, we are rather a traditional, investor here. We were a bit more, I would say, conservative in our approach. We like to see some initial revenues because in that way we can see that there is some, market validation for the products that these companies are developing. And especially, we don't like to spend too much of our investment on the product development. We like to finance the sales expansion, the business development, and so on. And it's much easier if you see that the product is already on the level that it can be marketed. Then you have more trust that your money is going to go for business development, and that's not some sort of developing new technologies.
Robert, I guess,
of course.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that there's always some sort of product development present, but we like to see the bulk of money going to the business development.
Robert, I guess that could be similar for corporate venture funds, or do you also invest in product development, like as a main investment focus?
So, of course, we like to see at least some revenues, because especially I think DaiBau is a good example of a digital platform, and there it's not important how much revenues they have, but that they have a business model that can be successful. We have other investments that we do, especially in the, let's say, material science space. And there it is very important that we don't only have a product, but also have some revenues, so that we see that people are paying money for a product, which is not only a nice development out of a university, but actually someone is willing to pay for it. And there it is, from my perspective, very important that you have early revenues. They don't need to be significant in the beginning, but you need to have some people who are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm. Martin, if you compare both of them, did you have any differences in negotiations, in the speed of closing the round? Did you have any experiences when you compare corporate venture fund and venture capital, like traditional one?
Well, honestly, I was quite scared how the procedure will go and how deep the due diligence will go. And people were saying it's probably also the M&A department behind it. Guys, you're going to be turned around. But it was actually really fast. We closed round in a couple of months. We only had like one contact point, which was Robert, and through him, actually, the diligence team. So the process was super smooth. And let's say that we began like the talks in September, and we closed in January. But if there wouldn't be this COVID situation and maybe some minor stalls, we could be even faster.
And since January, you have Henkel on board. So briefly, 2 months, so to say. Yeah. And you have not been suffocated yet. So you still breathe. You still have your freedom.
No hands on my neck. That's cool. It's great to see this different parts of Henkel. I think Robert really is an advocate of clear VC mentality. But of course, the part of the department of business side is more connected with this being in trenches, thinking about how to deliver, how to integrate, and I see here a really nice opportunity to really kind of drive in between those two factors, in between those two departments and mentalities, and this can really bring to some conclusions which maybe wouldn't be there if those sides wouldn't be present.
Maybe Marin, in your direction, if you comment South Central Ventures, how did you benefit from them? I mean, Jure mentioned that they have a strong network of corporates, that they're trying to put this in as added value for their startups as well. Do you have some experience on that?
Yeah, because, in general, I think you shouldn't. The main goal of having an investor on board like that shouldn't be their contacts, because you kind of have to be able to survive without that. But of course, that helps. And besides the fact that what I said before, that it really helps with signaling stability and backbone. I think structure is one thing, because in our case, we are co-founders and I would say a very close team, but it's one thing if you talk to each other all the time and bounce ideas and plans off each other's backs, and you kind of become sometimes a little bit blind. And it's another thing if you take an investor on board and then you have somebody to spar with, and you have somebody to make decisions with, and there is some back and forth, and helps to give structure that we weren't filling out reports to ourselves before, but sometimes you need to do these things so they become real, right? If you look at things every month in a standardized way, that already does something in your head, so that helps a lot, I think. And I really like, for us, it opens up the door of thinking about growth and things like evaluation and what are the strategic decisions you make, because I think without an investor in an early stage, you're very opportunistic and you think about the next 3 months, how you're going to pay the bills. And sometimes that means you make decisions that are not good in 2 years. So I think that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Robert, just one question. What kind of KPIs do you have? Are you measured on from Henkel? What kind of KPIs do you have to deliver? Are there solely financial KPIs, or do you have any strategic KPIs that you have to fulfill?
So the easy ones are the financial KPIs. We also have them, of course, return on invest and stuff like that, IRR and the usual stuff. And in addition to that, we also have a kind of rating or qualitative rating of our activities, meaning what has been the impact on our core business? How much revenues have been generated through our investment activities? That's always hard to measure, but it is in the end. If you ask someone from the business, if they say there was value created through the investment or through our activities, that's the kind of reward or also the kind of assessment we are looking for. It's not about what amount, what kind of revenues, but has their value been created?
Jure, I have an impression that working with corporates is as easy as anything else. This is perfect synergies here, very good experiences in this round. I think if it's done correctly, it's one of the most wonderful and synergetic things. But you also have some bad experiences with working with corporations together where they take the speed out when it's difficult to work with them.
Well, I don't know who's watching this stream, so I wouldn't be too specific. No, seriously. Look, of course, we had some bad experience. There were a couple of cases where, as Marin mentioned, and this was not the case with that scanner, it was the case with some other portfolio company, it doesn't matter which one, where the corporation was simply too slow and too extensive in their negotiation process with our portfolio company, and that resulted in our portfolio company ran out of cash, and we had to bridge to put them in a position where they can negotiate further. It was a total power play between corporation and Goliath and David. It's not even a fair play, to put it mildly. There are a couple of things that need to be taken into consideration when talking to corporates, especially the structure of the negotiation process. So as Marin said, Martin from DaiBau had big luck talking just to having one point contact in Henkel. Normally that's not the way how it works. Normally you have a number of people that you are talking to, and then this is very exhaustive for the portfolio company for our startup. And it can be tricky. It's not always a good fit between those organizations. Like the corporates are not so agile. They are much more structured, and that's where we jump in. We are in a way, our mission is always also to prepare the startups for such conversations and such steps, right? We make them more structured. We expect them to prepare some reports, maybe to have audits. This is not something that every startup has. And once they start talking to big clients, and once they go through the steps necessary to make a deal with a big corporation, it truly helps if they look bigger than they really are, because they are more structured compared to the ones that do not have some sort of venture backing.
But it's also quite an exciting and interesting role of yours, actually consulting startups also how to examine the fit possible match with the corporates. I think you have to leave in a few minutes, so I'd like to ask you one more question before you go.
Sure.
Obviously, what do you expect from 2021? What are the big topics? What is the hot shit, so to say, that you're looking at? Where are you gonna focus your activity?
Well, first of all, I hope that not that the world will come back to normal, because it won't, but that there, I would say that the game starts rolling again, in terms of travel and in-person meetings and so on. I think this will accelerate the entire economy. I hope that there's going to be a huge number of new startups that are now somewhere developing their own products and not being so exposed on the market, and they will come back to the market next year. I mean, this year, second half of this year. What else? I mean, I expect many great conferences, including Podim.
Are you going to be active in the deal room of Podim?
Of course we will. And yes, in terms of our portfolio development, we have a couple of companies that are in a little bit more mature stages than AdScanner and DaiBau. So we have high hopes of some liquidity events from our portfolio this year, maybe at the end of this year.
What do you see? Is there enough money in the market? Is there enough venture capital in the market to finance the growth, especially if we should experience like further Corona-related boost for digital business models?
Yeah, as you can see from all different sources, there's tons of money on the market. It's just the question whether all these investors are willing to take the risks associated with venture investments. Yeah, I'm definitely positive about the further development of the investment environment in that segment.
Great, Jure, thank you for being with us. I think you have to leave, and I
will
also,
unfortunately.
Thanks for taking time for this discussion. It was really exciting talk for me. Also, I've learned quite a few new things. Thank you, and good evening, Jure.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
In case we have any questions, do you want to join in? I've been trying to check on my mobile phone if we have something, but I wasn't really able to control that. So in case we have any questions, Urban, you could join us on stage and bring those questions in. In the meantime, I'd like to ask both founders the same question. Do you also have any, let's call them learnings and negative experience when working with corporates? It's not so much about who the corporates were, but what are the learnings that you could pass on to other founders when they cooperate with corporations? Marin, Martin, whoever wants.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I already saw one of the questions was, how to reach out to corporates and, how to essentially get there. I think that's the biggest negative, but also the biggest thing to understand, I think, is that very often you will not get a no. So you pitch to corporates, or you have them in a funnel and you write to them, or you try to approach them in any way. And, it's actually a luxury if somebody answers and says, no, thank you, or no, because A, B, and C. Usually you might get a yes, we'll see, and you get in a meeting and nothing happens, or you don't get a meeting at all and no answer at all. So I think it's, you have to go about it, about getting into the right level, into the right person is, I think, very, very crucial. And for us, I don't think that's true for everybody, but for us, this meant to talk to people who are close to product and close to the business model where this makes an impact, right? So not essentially often innovation hubs or innovation departments, but essentially, whose business model am I empowering, whom am I making a difference for? And then somebody who was a decision maker. And B, also, we learned that, there is no free POCs or anything like that. So, because if you offer something for free, then everybody will say yes, but there is no pain involved, there is no process involved. They don't even have to put you in as a supplier often. And if you charge anything, and there is some process involved, and that might take a few weeks, but then you're part of the process. So,
and do you have a different commitment then, would you say?
You definitely have a different commitment because you have to go essentially often to the same process if you clear for a budget of 10,000 euros then as the budget of 50,000 euros. After 100,000 it might be different, but it's the same process, and somebody won't do this process because they don't want to waste the time if they don't think there's going to be anything behind it. So that's important. And on the other side, what I mentioned before, definitely, talking to the right people and having perseverance there. It takes a long time, and we would all like to pitch something, get a reply, and then have a POC next month, but it takes sometimes a year or more with bigger corporates.
Martin, from your perspective, any experiences you want to share?
Well, it's quite early. We are together for let's say 2 months formally, but I think what we are regarding as a very important stance is that you have to keep your integrity. You have to stay who you are, and your corporate partner has to stay also in a role of a client, being strict with the expectations, because this is the only way you can develop yourself optimal enough that you are serving service or features which brings value to the table. So I think it's really important not to be lured that you change too much and that you lose your, as I said, integrity, and you have to stay open also, not maybe for the direct competitors, but you have to stay open to other corporates to join as clients and maybe as investors in future, because especially in platforms that we're building, it's important. I think the sum of the parts of the platform is stronger than just all the parts in. So this network effect of bringing more corporates, more clients in is really important. That's why you have to stay independent, and it's sometimes hard by experience of other people I talk about. But in our case, I think we're managing at the moment on this cooperation on the right way.
Mm-hmm. So we have one question from Aivaras Bakanas that has actually two aspects of it, and I'd like to ask any of you who wants to answer. First of all, the question of could corporates in the process of looking into startups steal their IP, their idea? Do you have any experiences on that? Did you have any bad experiences, any good experiences on that? Whoever wants to start.
I mean, we had essentially because we work with big corporations' data and we monetize it for them. Of course, a natural response for somebody who's thinking sanely is, do I need to work with this company, with the startup? Can't I do this myself? But and that I guess that can happen to a lot of companies out there. But I think you need to take that risk if you want to succeed, because maybe they will steal it, but then if they can copy it too quickly, then maybe it wasn't that hard to begin with. And the perfect thing is if they say, I would like to steal this, but I can't, and I have to work with these guys, that's actually the best response that you can get, I guess.
Okay. Anything to add?
Maybe I want to add something from the corporate side. So I think what is obvious is that VCs and also CVCs will not sign NDAs for an introductory call. Nobody will do that. Therefore, you also need to be very cautious, of course, with the information that you provide. Nevertheless, I think you need to attract attention by not also publishing everything and making sure that you also keep the interest of the other side. But I think there is also a kind of market, a VC and CVC market, which will guide you, because in case someone steals your idea, I think this will not just stay between you and the corporate, but this will be public knowledge. And I think that's the worst that can happen for an investor.
Okay. Zoran is asking, so he says, Robert just explained how they scouted for product that they needed, but I'm wondering if someone can explain or give tips the other way around, meaning how does a startup reach out to corporates, because it seems almost impossible. So I guess Martin, this is a question for you guys. How do you reach out to corporates when you're starting a product? Do you just knock on the innovation door and say, hey, I'm here, or how do you approach them?
I mean, I think there is a lot of hassling, a lot of movement. You have to stay active. You have to ask questions, not just push the product. I think it's very important that you try to share the same vision, that you know their pain points, and that you address those pain points. I mean, either that's your product directly or some kind of direction you want to develop in the future. You have to stay active, and I mean, if you open up yourself, if you speak to the right people, it will happen. But there is no like a cookbook. I think it's just you have to be present everywhere where you think it is crucial for you.
Okay, Marin, anything to add?
No, just what I mentioned before. It's about, are you partnering up with them? Are you selling to them? Are you trying to get them as investors? I think those are obviously completely different.
Is it important to be honest on what you want from them? Would you say don't go with a hidden agenda?
Yeah, please, straight. I mean, you have to know if the person who you're talking to in the first stage is the decision maker, because you don't want to waste your time either. But there is no point in not being honest or trying to sell something that is in the clouds.
Or talking about collaboration on some projects when you want to sell your product to them.
Exactly. So we also we actually changed our strategy a little bit to saying, we can consult you if you just want to be educated on the topic, and then you will pay us for consulting. It's not our core product, but just to make this differentiation, there's one thing about making you smarter about the topic that we're talking about, and there's a different thing. We have something to offer you. Yeah.
Great. Verica is asking something. Maybe Robert, this could be a question to you. If you talk also to maybe other corporations, do corporations have any desire and benefit from investing in psychological, social, artistic projects aimed at raising awareness? The Balkans will remain a dark hole. Without it, only the IT sector is developing, and our state and the NGO sector are not working hard enough on that. Do corporations see their place in that? What do you think, Robert?
So my personal view is that we would or could be a potential client, but as an investment, I'm not sure if we are the right partner, to be honest.
Would you say that not if it's a charity investment, but if it's a good business case behind it that might trigger your financial ambition, then you would be able to invest as well?
So in general, I think it doesn't. So we are not the right investors for the explained topics, if I understood them entirely correctly. That is why I said it doesn't make sense for us. It doesn't, or if there is some, let's say, benefit, and we have also invested, for example, in the recycling space, we have also invested in ESG topics. So it, if that is a kind of value add for us as Henkel, and where we can, as Henkel, provide value add, I think that goes without saying, that it could be of interest for an investment. But as I see it, the topics that have been read out, I think it's more a kind of support that you can then get when it comes to, let's say, offerings, when it comes to HR departments that you can link towards those startups. And that is the value add that we could bring as Henkel. Would we invest? No, we wouldn't, because I think it also doesn't make sense to take us up. Purely as a financial investor, I think there are better ones to take up, especially also in this space. But happy also to consider a potential collaboration, meaning being a partner or a customer.
Okay, maybe there's a second part of this question. How much is invested in psychological research on the impact of the IT sector development on people and society, as well as possible negative consequences? And I'd like to add possible positive consequences as well. Does anybody have a relationship to that question? I guess it's a rather specific question to ask, maybe not really the investors. So we might pass it on Verica to other aspects. Maybe Urban, you can help and search in your portfolio somebody who is dealing with this topic. Definitely important topic, but maybe not for this round tonight.
So maybe just maybe if you want to reach out afterwards, you can definitely do that. We invested into Kpis, which is let's say market intelligence platform, which is going to psychological direction. Just reach out to me and then we can check if there is any link. Otherwise, we can take it up there.
Great. So I don't see any further questions, and on that note, I'd like to say thank you to all of you guys. Thank you, Urban. Thank you, Podim, for putting together this really good round. And it was a great talk. Lots of learnings for me. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And thank you, dear speakers, for joining us and sharing these insights on your business and on your view of startup corporate collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Urban, any closing words from your side?
Yeah, so I enjoyed as much as you did, I think, and learned a lot of new insights. So having such a great, insightful guest is really, a pleasure, a great thing. So we, expect more of that kind of discussion on the main event. So on Podim between 17th and 19th of May. Also, we are, already setting up the third satellite event, so stay tuned. You'll know more about it in coming days. So for all the startups that you want to meet such a great investors and insightful talks, speeches, workshops on the main event, don't forget to apply it in 15th of March on our website. And stay tuned and looking forward to talk to you again and seeing you on Podim.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Good evening. Bye.